everyone, and welcome to the Evolve with Emily show YouTube channel. The best way to support the show on this YouTube channel is to subscribe to the channel, like the video, leave a comment, and or share it with a friend. I hope that you guys enjoy this episode, and whichever way you choose to support the show, I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much. I hope that today's message and episode brings some bit of positive change to your life. Hello everyone, welcome to the Evolve with Emily show. I am your host, Emily Hayden, and today I have a guest from Southern California. She is a mom of two, wife of an LA City firefighter. She is a registered nurse, and she's here today to share a little bit about her experience over the last year and how the medical industry and working at a hospital has evolved from what it was before 2020 to what it currently is, given all of the current mandates and different things that are going on. So let's give a warm welcome to today's guest, Garen Pido. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you. Yeah, I first came across you on Instagram. It was an Instagram post that you made, which if you guys are watching on the YouTube video, we're actually going to put that picture up on the screen right now. And I want to read the post for the listeners that maybe haven't seen this post. It says, "For over 5 years, I've advocated for patients' bodily autonomy, respecting their medical choices, even if I may have disagreed with them. Today, I was told I would no longer be able to sit inside to eat or drink while working on my shift. I can no longer commune in the break room with my fellow coworkers. I was told I need to sit outside in the name of health to protect vax individuals. Sorry, I thought that was the vax's job, but moving on. Mind you, I also am required to get tested every shift and need a negative test to be able to work. So if I'm negative, why am I required to sit outside? So here I am, outside during my lunch break, swollen eyes, because I genuinely can't believe someone could make a policy like this and then actually carry it out. A policy of segregation and discrimination based on medical choice. It's not even about the vaccine or health anymore. It's about politics and compliance. Will you comply, or how far can we push you until you do? I shouldn't even have to explain my choice to not receive the vax. That's between me and my doctor. I am tired. I am tired of the constant battle of these policies that make zero sense. So here we are in 2021, and someone might as well make a sign over my table that says, unvaxxed individuals only. Where's the line? When is enough enough? And this post now has 13,779 comments on it. Has gotten so many shares, so much engagement, and what I see is overwhelming support on your overall message and for what you were experiencing. So can you take me back to the moment before you wrote this post, before you took the photo, when you were alone, you were outside? What was it that you were feeling in that moment?
Gosh, just you even reading the post brings me back. I was so, I think, emotionally just so disheartened because I had never experienced something like that in my life ever. And I just remember when this said person came and actually said that in front of people, I felt like I lost my voice because I was so shocked that those words could come out of somebody's mouth and that we're in 2020 and this is what's happening, or 2021 and this is what's happening. But I remember going and sitting outside and just being like, is this really the world that we live in? Is this medical care, like everything that I loved about my job? Like I felt like the joy of my job was like slowly being taken away. And it's been really hard. It's been sad to see a lot of these policies come down the pipeline that make zero sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and just, it is today a form of segregation based on medical choice. And yeah, it was a really hard moment, but in that really hard moment too, like it's such a weird story, but I had like, it was like a cloudy day and I'm sitting there and then the sun broke through and hit my back. And I felt like
Wow.
God was like, I've got you. This is
Wow.
okay. It was such a powerful moment for me. And in that moment, I felt so much peace,
Mm-hmm.
like in such hardship, like knowing God's just got full control over what is going on was just really special.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that part of it,
Yeah.
which reminds me of something that you said once. I believe it was in an interview or maybe a caption. You
Mhm.
said, when you stand strong to your convictions, you will be so blessed. Can you speak
Yes.
to that and explain what that means?
Yeah. I just feel like God and puts things on our heart and leads us in certain paths where we just we find who we are in that. And I don't believe that we should be giving up anything in our life to please others. I think that our main goal is to please the Lord. And yeah, if we just really stand strong and in our faith, and I think that God's just totally going to open doors and we will totally be blessed by that.
I believe that as well. I really believe that it's always the right thing to do the right thing, right? If it's in your
Right.
heart and it feels like it's the right thing to do, I don't think you can go wrong. I've had people say, aren't you scared because you're risking your YouTube channel being shut down, your podcast being shut down? And honestly, I'm not scared at all. Like, if anything, I'll deal with it when it happens, but I know the same thing. I know that God's got me, and I know that the purpose behind what I'm doing is really important. So I agree with you. I think if you know that you are standing true to your convictions, you've got to know that God has a bigger plan and he has your back. And it may be this crucial moment, right? You probably never thought that you would get that much interaction on a post, right?
No, not
Have
at
you
all.
ever gotten that much interaction?
When I posted that, I'm like, I just want my friends and family to know like what's going on, and I just wanted to share like there's so many nurses coming forward and just sharing, their experiences. So to me, I was so humbled that people were so invested in
Mhm.
my story. And I
Mhm.
think it was totally the Lord. And I think that people also can resonate with it because when you can see something that somebody's going through that's relatable,
Mhm.
people want to know more and want to
Yeah.
support you. So
Yeah.
it's
The
really
other thing too that I think is really special is that you're kind of like on the inside, right? For those of us that aren't in the medical field, we don't work at the hospitals. We only
yeah,
hear about these things or we see it on the news, and we don't really, maybe some of us don't really have touch with what these mandates and policies really look like, what they feel like when you experience them. So to catch everybody up to date, she again is a nurse, works in a hospital. They have created these mandates, right? So if you don't abide by the mandate, there are sometimes that you can get like a religious exemption, which I believe is what you did, which not everybody gets either.
right. Which
So,
I felt so lucky that that was even an option and that mine was approved because I know that in my area alone, a lot of my nurse friends are, they're being declined their religious exemption. And
mm,
it just really hurts my heart because, America is supposed to be a free country. And
mhm.
to be a free country, we need to be allowing religious, personal, and or medical what's it called, declinations,
Exemptions, yeah.
exemptions. Yeah, so it's just really unfortunate that a lot of these big businesses aren't allowing those, and it's really interesting to me because it's not uniform. Like every hospital and or business has their own policies or their own mandates or what they are and are not accepting. So it's just it's mind baffling, really. mind
Yeah,
boggling.
I think for me, I have a very logical brain, and when things don't make logical sense to me, I'm just like, okay, so what's going on here? Because you're saying that 2 + 2 is 7, but sometimes it's 9, and other times it's 12, and that's not
Yeah,
true.
that's what it feels
Yeah,
like.
that's the world that we feel like we're living in. So, you mentioned once we all need to link arms, no matter your vaccination status. We are all human beings, and we all deserve basic human rights and decency. I will continue to advocate for that, and I think that that provides a lot of clarity for people who think that people who choose not to get the vaccine right now that they're just anti-vaxxers. But to me, it doesn't sound like that's your position. So, could you further explain your position on that?
Look, I believe that everybody has the choice and should have the freedom to choose what they want to do with their bodies. It's really interesting to me that with these mandates and stuff, people are just pushing one way, like this is the way that we need to do this to end the pandemic or whatever it is. And I really, my whole nursing career, I've always advocated for informed consent, bodily autonomy. And it feels like now in this last year, all those things have gone out the door. Like they're no longer considered. So I continue to stand strong. I don't believe that medicine is a one size fits all. I think that we need to be looking at people individually. And I see both sides. I think, people can benefit from the vaccine. I think people can't benefit from the vaccine, but that is their choice that they need to be making with their doctor or with their family. And I don't think that any government entity should be telling you what you can and cannot do. And, as a result of your choice, like, so you're not allowed to participate in some form of society. I mean, we can see what's going on in New York. Restaurants aren't even allowing unvaccinated individuals into their businesses anymore. And so, like, if we keep letting the government take control of things like this, we're going to be on a very slippery slope.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I want to get into you working at your hospital because from the outside, when you hear, oh, somebody got a religious exemption, you think, okay, great, you can go to work and everything's fine, right? Clearly from your post, it's not. So can you kind of explain the process of, what is the process of you going to work? What does that look like now?
Yeah, so I worked the pandemic, you know, without the vaccine, without sufficient PPE at times. I was pregnant at the beginning of the pandemic and worked was even not knowing a lot about this virus. And so for me, now that the vaccine has rolled out, people are getting it. And then they come up with these policies of you need to be vaccinated or have an exemption. So I applied for the exemption. It was approved, and honestly, in my mind, I'm like, great, like my exemption was approved.
Mm-hmm.
I can continue to work. I'm so grateful.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, it was like everybody had a deadline to submit their exemptions. You found out whether or not it was approved, and then this policy came out, and it's like now you have to wear like an N95 mask, which is a special non-rebreather mask. When this whole time I've been wearing just the regular surgical mask like everybody else. But if you're unvaccinated, you have to wear a special mask now. And then also, if you're unvaccinated, you have to, first it was testing once a week if you're working, and then it was twice a week. And then then they came out with the policy that you had to sit outside and you can no longer take breaks inside. So it's just like, it felt like almost punitive. So it's like, okay, we're allowing you this exemption, but now we're going to punish you for,
Yeah.
for taking that route. Which I'm like, well, why I've been unvaccinated this whole time. Why now? Like, just is there a special date that like all of a sudden I'm highly at risk? Like that doesn't make sense to me. I've been working and eating in the break room, and I hadn't gotten tested once prior to this situation or prior to the vaccine rolling out. So it's like all of a sudden, and I don't, whatever, I don't mind the testing, and, I want to keep everybody safe. So it's not even that, but it just seems like it's this snowball of punitive decisions over and over and over. So it's been
And from my understanding, so you have to test before you go into work, before you can work for the day?
right. So I have to produce a negative test. So
Okay.
to me, I'm like, if I know I'm negative, why do I have to go sit outside? Like that doesn't even make sense to me at all.
Right. And so just so that I'm clear in my understanding, please correct me if I'm wrong, but vaccinated individuals can both get COVID and also spread it, correct? Do they have to test negative before working?
They do not. And
So,
so, which is also, I'm like, why aren't we testing everybody? Why isn't everybody having to wear the special N95 mask if we all know that everybody can spread it and get it? So, it's just these punitive policies. So they just try to, in my mind, they're making it harder and harder and harder. So you're just like, you know what? Like, fine, I'll just get it, even though it's not something that you believe in. And I know a lot of women that I've worked with that have gotten to that point. They're like, I'm just tired of fighting against these policies. And it's like, I know that it is exhausting, but I'm like, I will not compromise my integrity and my faith and what I believe in to for these policies that don't make sense. Like if it logically made sense to me, I'd be like, okay, like let me consider, I'll sit back. Like I'm a logical person. I love to research. I'm a nurse. And so the, again, this just does, none of this made sense to me.
So question, being at the hospital, like the way that I am, I would go up to whoever's enforcing these, right? Assuming that they have medical knowledge and say, where's the logic in this? Why are we not all being tested, right? Like, are they really able to, with a straight face, enforce these kinds of mandates? Like, I just can't imagine someone with a straight face saying these things when they have medical knowledge to know that there's no logic here.
Right. So every time that we've done that, I have a group of girls that I'm working with, and we've been trying to go through HR. We've gone to town hall meetings, spoken with the CEO, and every time they're like, well, that's just California public health policy. And it actually, like, I've read the policy, and there was nothing in the policy about eating or drinking inside. So I was like, that is incorrect. This is not there.
Mm-hmm.
But then if you go to management, everybody's just following the rules.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's like, well, yeah, we just follow the rules because people are getting sick. And it's like, but there's no scientific explanation for why we're doing these things. So it's a fight that we're continuing to have, and we're continuing to battle. But, I'm thankful that to be in a group that is very good about advocating for our rights, but it just sometimes it feels like we're talking like to a wall because everybody just they're so set in their ways. And the answer, I mean, I've gotten an answer before back from HR. It's like, well, why don't you just get vaccinated? And I'm like, that's not an answer. Like, I have an exemption. Like, that shouldn't even be part of the conversation. That's none of their business.
Yeah.
But that's always the answer. Why don't you just get vaccinated? And I'm like, why? Because in your mind it's easier
Right.
than dealing with the problem at hand. And yeah, and it's even managers from unit to unit. Like, I know some people in my hospital, they have managers that are like, I saw the email, but I am not going to be enforcing that in my unit. Like, they've stood strong and said no. Wow. And then you have managers that are like, oh, they have good hearts. And I genuinely think the manager that I have has a good heart. I think she just genuinely is following the rules.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I think we see a lot of right now, a lot of people that are just kind of following the status quo, following whatever they're being told. But I think it makes it even more important for people like you and your friends there to advocate and to use your voice and to speak out. And I think it's incredible that you guys are doing that. I interviewed an educator on one of the recent shows. Her name was Lilith. And she was explaining how one of the ways she's been getting involved is just by getting connected with other people in her community. For example, other nurses that are at your hospital, right? And coming together and forming an alliance and saying, we're going to use our voice because we have strength in numbers. You alone is so much harder than you with, even just one person next to you. And I hope that not just yourself, but all of your friends at work too, can see how many people are truly behind you, because maybe you feel alone in your community. Maybe you guys feel outnumbered at your hospital. But if you look at what happened, even just with one Instagram post, people are out there in massive numbers willing to support and be there for you guys. And you got to remember, for every person that's speaking out, there's so many other people that are still scared to speak out, that are being quiet, that need others with a strong voice to be the person speaking out so then they can come and support them. So just keep that in mind and be encouraged that even when you do feel alone, even if you do feel outnumbered, you're truly not. And even with social media, I've had people reach out before and say, thank you for speaking out. I never see anyone speaking out like that. I know that we're the minority. You must get a lot of hate. And I always respond back. I say, we're not. I think that's curated that way for a reason. I'm actually shadow banned on a lot of different things because of the things that I share. And they want you to feel like you're outnumbered. They want you to feel like you're alone, even if it's just on a social media feed, right? So they're purposely silencing certain things and allowing other things to be seen so that the majority of what you see is curated to present a certain narrative to you. So just kind of keep in mind, you guys are not alone. There's a lot of people and a lot of nurses, a lot of doctors that fully back you. I've even had conversations with some nurses and doctors who plan to create kind of like an alternative way of medicine and helping people and hospitals and things down the road if this thing kind of full sends. So I want people to know that there are going to be other options out there, and we might just go through a little bit of some rough waters for right now. You mentioned you mentioned this one quote that I want to share. It says, "We were begged to stay on the front line. People were backing us and advocating for us. And now look at where you're at," right? So take me back to when this pandemic first hit and when we're seeing everywhere how people in the hospitals are the heroes and we're basically like celebrating you guys, which is so well deserved. Like, you guys truly, I cannot even imagine what you guys went through. So thank you for everything that you went through, even being pregnant, putting yourself and your own family at risk to help and to serve the public. Like, it's just such an incredible thing. So go back to that time when everybody was celebrating you guys and what it felt like, what it looked like, and then kind of contrast that with what you're experiencing now.
Yeah. At the beginning of the pandemic, I think because nobody really knew a lot about this virus, like I genuinely was like taking precautions,
Mm-hmm.
doing everything that I could to keep my family safe. We didn't know a lot. And then, as the pandemic evolved, we were starting to see more and more things come out, science and whatnot. And I just remember like even my managers were like, like please don't go on maternity leave, like we need you, like we're at a shortage. And it's even like just our ERs were impacted just because people were genuinely scared.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily like true COVID positive cases at that time. It was a lot of fear, like people were scared for their children. Hospitals were completely shut down. We were shutting out family members. So you had that whole other entity. And so family members were relying on us to provide, information about their loved ones. It was a lot to take on at the beginning of this pandemic. And to just, people were sending, I know it sounds silly, but sending us food or gift cards
Oh.
or coffees and just like thank you so much and you guys are the heroes. And people were holding up signs like we love our nurses, we love our firemen, we love our doctors, all these things. And now being on the other side, and just people telling me that I'm selfish, that I don't care about other, my patients, that they only wish horrible things for me and my family.
Wow.
Has been, even from people that I know and love and have worked with who have just been questioning like my reasonings, and those are my own, and I shouldn't have to tell anybody why I do or do not want the vaccine. That's my personal decision with my physician. And I think that we've all become so involved in each other's care that it's caused this divisiveness. And we see it all over the country right now. Like people are, you're either this or this. Like there is no like cohesiveness. And I think like for me, I want the message out there like you can be vaccinated, you cannot be vaccinated, but let's all link arms. Like we're standing together in unity to protect each other's rights. And that's
Yes.
what it all comes down to. Because once they start pitting us up against one another, people are going to, it's like a weird like gang, like people are like, you're no longer included here. We don't want you around. Like I've seen so many families torn apart because a family member doesn't want to get vaccinated and they're no longer invited to a grandma's birthday or whatever
Wow.
it is. It's disheartening, like our kids aren't being able to see people in the family or whatever it is. And there's so much divisiveness. And honestly, I just truly believe it's so evil. Like this is just so evil. And if we can just stand firm together and support one another, and bring some unity back and just supporting one another's decisions, it will go a long way. And I think that, like you were saying earlier, just people starting to stand up and use their voices in their communities and advocating for one another, advocating for our kids, because these mandates are now affecting our children, which just, that's another thing in itself. We just really need to stand united and use your voice. All these mama bears out there that are advocating for their kids, like everything, every little bit helps. And I don't know if you know this, but I did share it. Our policy was actually reversed at the hospital.
I did not know this. When was this?
It was reversed a week later from my
No
initial.
way.
So if that gives like, I know there's so
Wow.
much like there's so much bad in the world, but if that gives a glimmer of hope to anybody that your voice matters, like
Mm-hmm.
I want people to know that when you stand, your voice does matter and people will hear you. And especially when you stand united with others. And I think the overwhelming support has just been such a big part in that as well. And people are finding their voices.
Wow. Oh my gosh, that is so incredible. Thank you for sharing. I
Yeah.
saw someone else post something similar where I believe it was a dentist office where they had created these mandates and all of the employees joined forces. And it wasn't every single one of them, but it was the majority of them that let them know, okay, if this is your policy, we understand and kindly will be seeking employment elsewhere. And then that policy was completely reversed and now they're at work and they're happy and everything's great. So it's true. We really do have strength in numbers. And I think, just to echo what you're saying here, let's not forget that the foundation of this country is freedom, freedom of choice. It's not that we need to think the same or believe the same. It's actually the freedom to think and to believe differently and the respect for other people to do the same in their lives. So I think we can all join forces in advocating for freedom for all things. And also, I just want to raise everyone's attention to the fact that right now it may be medical freedom that is, being taken away, but later it could be a different freedom. And maybe you fall under a different category there where you're the one that's being ostracized and taken, freedoms are taken away and you're not able to participate in society. So for all the people out there that, are right now, maybe they're the vaxxed individuals that are able to participate in everything and they, feel really good about it. Just don't forget, like, we're actually advocating for your freedom in other topics and other issues as well, so that you're never in this position. And I think, similar to what you're saying, the more cohesive we can be, the more unified that we can be, the more that we can kind of get out of this situation that we're in, which I too believe is evil. I think there is a huge spiritual war going on right now. And I think it's so much deeper than just these surface level issues. But I think that's why these issues can't be seen as insignificant. It's not insignificant to not have freedom over what you put inside of your body. It's simply the first step and it's a slippery slope. And if we don't handle these things right now today, it leads to a destination that I don't think any of us want to be at. So I think we need to really place importance on these conversations, on getting together with communities and letting your voices be heard. So you mentioned that you have two children, so one of them you just had, right? Because you said you were pregnant throughout the.
A little over a year old now.
Well,
She just
congrats. And so are they in school yet? Obviously she's not, but is your other in school yet? Like, are they being affected by this at all?
my other is only 2.5, so
Okay.
he's in school. So those mandates haven't come to them yet. So
Mm-hmm.
which I'm really grateful for. But I mean, I'm still fighting because I know eventually it will come to him, and
Mm-hmm.
I don't even want to have to put up that fight, for him in the future. Like, I'm doing it now
Yeah.
and protecting their rights now. I mean, I have nieces and nephews that are in kindergarten and that are going to be dealing with this. So
Mm.
um, we're definitely standing strong for them and future generations after that too.
Yeah, I think it's important, like you're saying, not just to consider our own freedoms and what we want to do and, should have the freedom to do now, but what do we want our nieces and nephews to grow up like, our children, our, that future generation. And it's a little scary if you think about the fact that there's a chance that they could never know the America that we know. And I think that could happen if we don't stand up and fight back now. So your story that the policy got reversed, I think is so inspiring and will really help a lot of people to know that their voice really does matter. And not just that, but when you support somebody that is speaking out, it matters. So I hope everybody will be encouraged to do that. I want to get into why you got into nursing in the first place. What made you want to be a nurse? What do you love about nursing?
Yeah, so I got my bachelor's degree from UC Davis, and then I was coming home. I wanted to be a doctor,
Mm-hmm.
and I wanted to go into medicine. I always knew, like, I loved learning about the human body. I loved just like helping people, and so I knew I wanted to go in healthcare, and I was like, all right, I'm going to go and take my MCATs and become a doctor. So I was in the midst of studying, but while I was doing that, I started working at a pediatric office, and I was doing pediatric research there. So I started working a lot with the nurses actually in that department, and I loved all the hands-on time that they were getting with those kids and those families. And I just kind of saw the difference just in time that the doctors get versus the nurses. And for me, I was like, I really love, how much time and how invested they can be, with their patients, because the majority of time is spent with the nurses. Doctors play a huge role, but obviously, like, even you see it in hospitals, majority of time is your care from the nurses.
Mm-hmm.
And so I decided then, after working there about a year, that I actually wanted to pursue nursing school instead.
Mm-hmm.
So I started to pursue nursing school, got my degree, and I really went into it because I genuinely love knowing people, helping them. Like, it brings me such joy to see a patient come in,
Mm-hmm.
with something that's going on, and then walk out feeling better, or being able to walk again, or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's such a journey to be able to go through that with them, and just be a part of that journey. That is something that genuinely touches my heart so much. Like, I run into patients, around my neighborhood sometimes, and they're like, "You were my nurse for this
Aw.
situation, or this," and it's just like, you forget how much of an impact you can make, just even like 10 minutes with somebody and holding their hand, or just saying, like, "You're safe,
Mm.
you're good, got you. I worked in labor and delivery. Like, your baby's gonna be okay. You're
Wow.
safe. We're gonna have a healthy baby here."
Mm.
Those sorts of things, and those words can hold so much weight to somebody going through something in such distress. So I love I love just being an advocate for people. I loved, again, walking that journey with them. It brings me so much joy, for sure.
That's beautiful. I can tell in your heart just how much you value the connection and the relationships that you're able to build, and how much of an encourager and supporter you are, which I'm sure makes you an incredible wife and mom as well. It's really incredible just to see someone with such a giving heart that's in such a service oriented position. Because I know that when you're sick and when you're in the hospital, it's such a vulnerable position to be in. It's not just being sick at home, where you feel tired and sad and whatever. But if it's bad enough to actually have to go to the hospital, you're really vulnerable at that point. So, I mean, I know what even just a smile or a kind gesture or just some caretaking would do in that kind of position. So, what you guys do is really incredible and so important. And I'm glad that you're able to continue doing what you love to do, and that you're not having to choose something else right now. I know there's a lot of nurses that I've been in contact with and spoken to who, they've had to get terminated from their position. And now they're, looking at alternative ways to still express that same desire for patient care. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that with us.
Yeah, there's a lot of amazing nurses, and majority is all about patient care, for sure, and their hearts are so big. And
Mm-hmm.
um, there's a certain kind, I feel like, of nurse, that you have to have that some innate
Mm.
um, joy and care for others to be able to get into the profession. So it's really sad to see all these wonderful providers having to, kind of navigate different areas of life.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that wherever they go, it's going to be so impactful, because you still carry that same weight, and wanting to help one another, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's multiple ways to carry out your fulfillment and your purpose and in your calling. So even for those that are listening that maybe their job did get terminated, don't stop looking for the next way to kind of let that out, because I really think that if we're still living, it's our responsibility and duty to be the fullest expression of ourselves. And sometimes that fullest expression might change in the way that it manifests, right? It might change positions or jobs or cities or states, but you can always find a way to let out that part of you. I really believe that we all have this light inside of us, and you guys have such a bright light. And so you just find a different way to let that light shine. And I know that now more than ever, we really need that light inside the world.
Thank you. Yes,
Yeah. So you had mentioned, along with patient care, kind of earlier in the show, about informed consent. And I know with a lot of your patients, you probably had to go through this with a lot of them. Can you explain informed consent a little bit and what that entails?
Yeah, so before any medical procedure, you're always given a consent form, and the doctor, anesthesiologists, nurses, everybody has to kind of go over with you risk versus benefit of what's going on. And the doctor will sit you down and say, like, this is what we're suggesting that you do as part of your medical care. Here's you can have the risks that come with it are this, and the benefits that will come with it are this, and then you let the patient decide
Mm-hmm.
what they feel is best for them. So with informed consent, it's always the patient deciding who if they want to continue with the medical procedure.
Mm-hmm.
So with these mandates, I have felt that there's a lot of coercion instead of informed consent. But even though, I mean, nobody's actually holding you down and putting the vaccine into your body. So
Mm-hmm.
we all know that. But when you are forced to choose between your livelihood and a vaccine, is that really a choice? And like, is that really informed consent? Because I know a lot of people who may have disagreed with me said, well, you had the choice. You had the choice to get the vaccine or you don't. But I'm like, well, that's not really like, it's not really a choice. They're
Mm-mm.
like, you either can participate in society or you can't, like, choose one or the other. So that's not actually like risk versus benefit. That's
Mm-hmm.
like, that's coercion,
Yeah, it's
and
manipulation.
yes, exactly. So I've never sat down with a patient before surgery and said, like, you can either get this procedure or you can no longer, um, you know, use your leg or whatever. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's just like you have to give them the choice of whether or not they feel comfortable and safe enough to receive the medical procedure, and that that's the discussion again with your doctor. So
Yeah,
um,
which I also agree should be an individual conversation with your doctor, not something that you have to explain and share with everybody or Susie to ask at the grocery store.
I'm
uh,
like, make that cool again. Why are we not? Why is everybody's medical information, like just widely available to everybody?
it's wild. There's some other medical questions we could ask that I'm sure nobody would want to talk about. Right? We're not asking you those questions.
Yeah, exactly. It's nobody's business. So it's so interesting to me how everybody is so involved in one another's like medical info. Like, can you go to a concert? Well, are you vaccinated? Well, I've never had to tell you whether or not I'm vaccinated before. Like, why? Like it's
Mhm.
just it's this weird time, and yeah, I want to make HIPAA cool again for
Yeah.
sure.
Let's make HIPAA cool again. Those should be shirts. Have you made a shirt like that?
Yeah, right. We need a shirt.
Make a t-shirt. That'd be great. I would buy one, but the listeners would buy one. So I want to kind of transition a little bit into your faith. You've spoken really openly about your faith and how that's been a foundation for you. So I want to talk a little bit about when you were first going through, the pandemic, when you guys were just overworked and you're having to experience all of these things inside of the hospital behind the scenes that no one else experiences. I can only imagine that it was really difficult on you mentally to experience all of this. And even in the midst of the fear and the unknown, and then having to go back to your family. So, how was it that your faith played a role in all of the unknown, maybe the fear, and just those different hardships that you were experiencing during that time?
Yeah, it's actually been a really sweet like year and a half for me, because I just really felt like the Lord was like calling believers back to be like, let's go back to the foundation. Like, I am the foundation. And so I've been like craving to be like in the Word more and just really being equipped with knowledge of the Bible and just everything that God has like laid out for us.
Mm-hmm,
Like,
mm-hmm.
our foundation is just really laid out in the Bible. And I'm so grateful because I feel like the Lord's like been awakening my heart to that. Like, we need to be more equipped and knowledgeable and in prayer and worship, and be able to stand strong and steadfast in our decisions, because I mean, it's like my mind constantly, am I doing what's right? Like I want to make sure that I'm advocating for what is right. And I just have this overwhelming sense of peace from the Lord. Like I know that it's just God that's like, you are advocating for what is right. I'm not telling people what to do. That's not my choice. I just want people to be able to stand strong in your convictions, know where you belong, know that you are loved and chosen by the Lord, and that when we're constantly seeking Him, like He will always provide. So it's been a really sweet year for me, just for that ever evolving. Like I've grown up a Christian. I've known the Lord my whole life, but this past 2 years, I've really had to lean on Him for guidance, because it's a hard world, and our world is getting more and more deceptive and more evil. So just being able to stand strong in your faith has been something for my family that has really kept us afloat, and just to have so much peace. Like, after that post went viral, like a lot of people are like, aren't you scared? Aren't you scared that your hospital is going to find out that you're punished, all these things? And that little bit of like fear does sink in sometimes, but then I know what I'm doing is right, and I find so much peace in that, and the Lord has just covered me. I feel like, because people will be like, oh my gosh, look at all, there's some like nasty comments. I'm like, but look at all the good ones. Like, look at all the people that are like standing strong and supporting and want unity and want help. Like, that's what God, I feel like, is really revealing in this whole situation, for sure.
Yeah. Wow. That is beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And I think it really just speaks to when you pour into your relationship with God, He builds you up, like you were saying, so that when you are in those moments, you have His confidence, right? We're not relying on our own knowledge, our own confidence, but we're actually relying on the confidence that we gain from relationship with Him. What are some ways that you build your faith? What are some things that you do to have those like touch points or connections with God?
I try to just be in Bible study. So I'm in a women's Bible study right now, actually, through my church. So I do that. I love to worship. I love worship music. So I feel like I will turn on worship music in the car, and just like that's when my mind, like I have like a minute to like just pray and be in the Word, because being a mom of two kids, it's hard to balance time sometimes. So like, and really just making time. Like I feel like we choose how we place our time. So it's like, instead of watching that Netflix show for an hour, I'm really going to be disciplined and be in the Word for this hour. And He's so good. Oh my gosh, I feel like when we are so disciplined, He seeks us harder too. He's like revealing Himself more and more to us. So yeah, just being in the Word, worshiping, and just staying connected in the community with believers and like-minded individuals. I have like a little text group of my best friends who are all believers, and with everything, we're like constantly praying for one another, constantly lifting each other up, just being so supportive of one another. So yeah, just constantly seeking the Lord is definitely just on my to-do list.
Yeah. And I love that you mentioned how sometimes it needs to be a discipline, because we're not always like motivated or moved to like go spend time with God. Right. But I love hearing from your experience that you feel that He does reward that discipline of showing up and equipping yourself with the Word. When in your life have you kind of experienced how your previous time spending time with God, like maybe reading the Word, has shown up in other moments, right? So you mentioned like being equipped with the Word. So how have you noticed that in your life, and what has it done for you in those moments where you realized like the Word or whatever it was that you gained from that was inside of you from spending time with Him?
Yeah, I mean, just I can give you examples from just this pandemic,
That'd be
like,
cool. Yeah.
yeah, just like when I was sitting outside, where I was like, I feel so defeated, like after sitting outside to eat, and then God's just like, He just shows up, and it's like this warmth and comfort of knowing the Lord, and but being able to decipher like this is Him, like this is God right here, just showing up and being like, I got you, like
Yes.
got your back. And just, being able to stand strong, because, in those moments where you're singled out at work and you're just like, it feels so heavy, you
Mm-hmm.
have that like light in you to be like, no, this is not okay, I'm going to use my voice. And even now, like, I'm hoping like through my platform, like that I can just share, the love of the Lord, and he's given me this platform to go ahead and do that,
Mm-hmm.
which has been really sweet. And none other than the Lord can bring in that, make my post go so viral and connect with so many people. And it's just, yeah, it's been a really sweet journey, just even this last year.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing with us.
Yeah, of course.
So you mentioned in one of your posts that your husband was a fireman for LA City and that he would be terminated in 2 weeks based on the mandates. Is there any update that you can give us on that?
Yeah, so this is actually technically his last week. Well, his last shift will be next Tuesday, and then he'll be put on unpaid leave for 5 days. It's kind of weird because you would think like if they gave a termination date, they would just terminate you at that point, but they're putting them on unpaid leave for 5 days. And if you still don't get the vaccination, then they're putting you on an unpaid leave for another 15 days after that. And then supposedly terminating. I know that without like giving too much information, there's a big lawsuit that's going on with LA City, and I think that they're just genuinely trying to get numbers, because what ultimately happens if you fire and let go, all these firefighters and or healthcare workers, is it affects the community.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's nobody to respond to calls, this is going to actually affect the people of the community. So I think they're trying to get numbers to see if they can actually terminate all these guys. So I'm just praying that they all stand firm, stand strong, and unite with one another,
Mm-hmm.
um, because it will be detrimental to the community for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that's one aspect that, a lot of people maybe aren't considering is that with all the nurses and emergency personnel and policemen and people that are being terminated because of these mandates, we're going to have quite the shortage of all of these things, right? And then what happens when, people are coming to the hospital and there's nobody to help take care of them? And I can only imagine the weight that's on the back of the nurses and the doctors that are there working, regardless if they're, vaxxed or medically exempt or whatever it is. I can only imagine the burden that they feel and some of the things that they may have to go through if they are short staffed with an influx of people.
It's been, I get texts almost every day from our hospital asking for extra shifts. My husband, every time he goes in, I like know that he's going to be mandated the next day because they're so short staffed already.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just, I think if people again, like you said, people in the community really start to realize how this is going to affect them personally, because if you show up at the hospital and there's not anybody to take care of you, I mean, that's the choice between life and, or not the choice, but that's between life and death.
Right.
Like this 10 minutes can be life and death. And
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to a man named Jeff with Firefighters for Freedom the other night, and he was saying, if there's no ambulance and they have to send an ambulance from 7 minutes away, and your loved one is having a heart attack, that 7 minutes matters. So would you rather have the ambulance that's a minute away or 7 minutes?
Mm-hmm.
And so every minute counts when it comes to healthcare and safety, for these patients. And if we're letting go qualified, experienced workers,
Mm-hmm.
that it just makes zero sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Staffing ratios are already low. Like they're trying to hire like crazy. They can't even get people to fill the positions they are now, and now they're willing to let go of qualified people. It's gonna really affect the people of the community, and people don't realize that.
Yeah, I think now more than ever, people have to stand up and speak out because we don't really have time to wait anymore,
Right?
especially when all these mandates we're getting to these last few days. So I hope, and I pray that the people that work at where your husband works, I hope that they are encouraged and encouraged enough to speak out and to stand up and that gets overturned because we've seen that it can happen. So hopefully, and if not, we all know God's got you guys and, you guys will figure out that next step. But wow, you being a nurse and him being a fireman, you guys both being, in a service position for the community. How does that work in y'all's relationship and the time you get to spend with each other and the children that you have? Like, how do you guys balance all of that?
Yeah, we just have a lot of intentional time. Like our schedule, it's so funny when we were dating with no children, we were like, this is the best schedule ever because as a nurse, I can kind of make my own schedule. So, and I have his schedule a year in advance.
Oh,
So I would
wow.
plot my days around his, and then we'd be like every 4 day or whatever that he would have, we just go on vacation somewhere or travel or, we love to be outdoors. And so we would go camping and whatnot. And then with children, that totally throws you for a loop for sure. And so our family life shifted, but um, I feel like because we have to really value and put each other first and really value intentional time with one another, our relationship has grown so much because you can't really just like sit back and hope that you seek each other out. Like you really have to like, hey babe, we need a date night, like let's go,
Yeah.
you're home today, let's go do hike together and just take one-on-one time and then family time as well. So definitely a lot of shifting and prioritizing one another for sure.
Yeah, and that reminds me of what you said earlier, how we choose how we spend our time, right? So it'd probably be really easy for both of you guys to just kind of when you get home, sit on the couch and watch Netflix and relax or do something for yourself, or just spend time unloading from what you guys experience at work. And, so for you guys to really carve out that time and make each other a priority really speaks to why your relationship is probably thriving and growing, which is beautiful to hear and to see. How long have you guys been together?
We've been together for almost 8 years and married for 3.
Wow, that's incredible. Can you
Yeah.
share maybe something that you've learned in relationship together that has helped you guys to do relationship better? Because what I find is that relationship is really hard, whether it's friends or it's your significant other. So, is there any sort of like tip or advice or something you could share for people looking to do relationship better?
Yeah, I just think that having a lot of like grace and empathy for one another. I know that it's so easy. Like it, they say like the people that you love the most are you're like easily to like hurt the most because you know that they'll forgive you. But I also think that it's like having the humility to say like, hey, what I said was not okay. I'm sorry, and just really like focusing on building up your relationship, and then again like the foundation of the Lord, like that is huge in any relationship to me. And just having both of us seek God individually and as a couple has been so amazing, and just shown so much growth in our relationship for sure.
So,
Because
yeah, oh, go
priority.
ahead. Sorry.
That's okay.
So, question with that, because you hear a lot of people that say in, relationship or in husband and wife, like put God first and that it's really great. It improves the relationship. But can you share how it impacts the relationship, how that realistically impacts the relationship, maybe in different circumstances or just any personal experience there?
I think that for me, it's just like it kind of humbles me a little bit, and just like being able to be gracious with my husband in a sense because we're humans, like we don't agree on everything, but it's able to like have a common ground and understanding of one another and knowing each other's hearts. Like I know my husband's heart is always for me, and it's always going to be supporting me. And so if we have a disagreement on something, we're able to like actually talk about it. But then also like I feel like you have those nights where I will say something that, I out of anger or that's something that I didn't mean. And then I feel like, the next day in my Bible, like I'll apologize to my husband, but the next day in my Bible, it's like God's like revealing to me something else, and it's like, okay, this is something that's actually in my heart. It's like a heart fix that I need to work on. So it's just having that grace with one another. My husband knows my heart and like knows that, oh, she was just angry in that moment, she doesn't actually mean those things. But again, to be able to have the humility to apologize to one another and then just seek the Lord in those moments too is really foundational.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And I kind of would like to echo what you were saying, how I love how you put it, like it's a heart fix that you actually need to work on, right? And I think sometimes when we get into a relationship with people and conflict starts to arise, we think it's because of that person. But the truth is, usually what comes out of us is already inside of us, because you can't have it come out of you if it doesn't exist inside of you. So then it's getting to the root of, okay, where did this come from? And I think it's beautiful when you can take that journey with God and let Him reveal those things to you, because I think that's where true healing can really happen, because God is love and love creates healing. So yeah, that's I think that's really important that you guys place each other as priority. You have God first in that, and that you guys are along the journey as a partnership and as a team to allow each other the process of working through the hard things. Because especially in relationship, I feel like you're never going to not make somebody mad or upset, right? It just happens. Like even in friendships.
Oh, totally. I feel like the couples that are like, we're perfect and we never fight. And I'm like, well, then something's wrong. Then one of you's not being honest.
Totally, totally. I asked my dad this question once. It was I got a Q&A on Instagram, and my dad does a lot of advice and talks. So I asked him, the question said, we have an argument and then we come to an agreement, and then one person just can't let it go and we get into another argument. And he's like, okay, well, you didn't come to an agreement then. Someone's lying. So same thing what you're saying, right? Like if you really had an agreement, you both would be fine about it.
Exactly.
Well, today's conversation has been really awesome, really eye-opening, and I think will help people to feel really encouraged, whether they are in the medical field, they are in some sort of service industry where this is happening, or if they're just somebody that is kind of nervous to use their voice. I hope it can shed some light that you should be encouraged and inspired, that there's a lot of other people that will link arms with you. And at the end of the day, we should all look for ways that we can be unified, not ways that we can be divided. Is there anything that we didn't cover on today's podcast that you would like to share? Or is there any last word of encouragement or anything that you'd like to share with the listeners?
I mean, I think we kind of went over it, but I don't think people realize like how crucial this time is, a crucial time in history that's really going to affect future generations. And my whole point of standing for medical freedom is that our children will get the same choices and same treatment when they're older, and that they will still know, again, like you were saying, the America that we know, the America that advocates for freedom of choice. And yeah, I really want people to know that their voice matters, and this affects not just us, but future generations for sure.
Thank you so much for being on today's show.
Thank you.
Of course. Everybody, thank you for listening to today's show or watching it if you're here on YouTube. Please make sure to like, comment, share the show, tag us both on your Instagram stories. I'll have her information linked below if you'd like to give her a follow, share some support with her. I'll have any links that are associated with her below. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye, guys.